Hey there darlings, welcome to Roots and Refuge Farm. My name is Jess, this is my tea garden, and today I want to show it to you. So I've made a lot of content on this space here over the last couple of months as we put this together, built it, put the beds together. I have another video that kind of talks about all the stuff that we use, but today I just want to focus on the plants and what's growing in here. I did also do another video earlier on in the season with my must grow plants for a tea garden. I don't have all of those plants in here because I have them growing elsewhere on my farm and in my other gardens, but a lot of them are here, and I go really in depth in that video about the benefits of each thing and what they can use. So both of those videos will be linked below. If you're new here, I'm growing in the Midlands of South Carolina, zone 8A, 7B, somewhere in between those two. And I make a lot of garden content showing how to grow food and all of the lovely things. I just love gardening. And this year we decided to build this little garden right here outside of our house, easily accessible for herbs and tea. We just planted this garden a couple of weeks ago, and as it is with many perennial things, they take a little bit after you put them in the ground to really start growing. And for the first week and a half we had a lot of rain, which is not a bad thing for a freshly planted garden, but it was a lot of rain, so it sort of washed a lot of the nutrients out. My plants were looking sort of yellow, so then they kind of had to recover from that, and now I'm finally starting to see some new growth. Things are starting to pick up, and so at this point it will start changing more rapidly. First off, there are a couple things that structurally are going to change that I'm just not in a massive rush to do. We're going to put a little arbor over the entry here, and I've got these Jasmina arbor roses planted here. These are going to climb all over that arbor. I will weave them through. The Jasmina is a really pretty pink rose, and the arbor rose line I love. They grow on their own roots, they stay really healthy, and a lot of roses can be a little bit touchy, especially living in a very humid place like here in South Carolina, but I have found that the arbor rose line does well here, and I've actually, since I've grown it, I had a beautiful tangerine colored arbor rose on an arbor at my old house, and I've had several viewers grow it and say they had incredible success with it as well in a lot of different growing zones and conditions. So it was kind of an obvious choice for me to put here. Of course, that won't be a real showstopper for another at least year or two. That's okay, we can wait. Over here in this bed I have it's the powwow berry purple coneflower echinacea. So echinacea is a great plant for medicinal support. It's great to help support the immune system, and I may end up thinning these out. I bought a bunch of these little starts and I planted them thick, but just depending on how they come in, this row in the middle, I may end up moving it up into my cottage garden if I feel like they're too full. And down here on this side I have some zinnias that I put in. I honestly cannot remember the variety of these. They were seeds that I started, so it was obviously something I was excited about. When they bloom, I'll know their name. And here I put in a few sunflowers. My friend Sunflower Steve breeds sunflowers, and he has a lot of incredibly cool looking flowers. And he actually decided to save seeds from a flower that looked a lot like my logo. So he searched his sunflower fields. He said this is the one that reminded him the most of my Roots and Refuge logo. So he isolated it and saved the seeds from it. So that's what those three flowers are. I've got some more up in the other garden and I'm really excited for them. And this space I actually haven't filled out yet. I need to grab some zinnia seeds when I'm thinking about it and come put them in here. But my hope here was to have this bed be really full of blooming, beautiful, colorful zinnias. Can y'all just imagine how gorgeous that'll be, with those kind of being real bushy up here around this fence, kind of peeking through the fence in different places. So I want to fill this out. So right here I have a cilantro plant which has very quickly gone to seed, as I knew it would. I brought some pruners out because I want to cut this little bit off that's struggling. So I'm okay with this going to seed. I want it to reseed right here, and my hope is this fall when the weather cools back off, we'll have cilantro again. That's something we typically grow over the winter in hot South Carolina. And of course, you can grow cilantro and harvest the seeds. You typically wait till they get fully developed and dry, and then you have coriander. I'm gonna leave them all out here. This is just a little small plant start. At this point, I will have cilantro volunteering all over my big garden because I always let it go to seed there and then reseed, and it always comes up in like incredibly inconvenient places. Like my cottage garden was absolutely full of cilantro this winter and late winter. By the time it hits spring, it starts going to seed. But I harvested a bunch of it and dried it, and that's what I use. It is inconvenient because the time I want cilantro the absolute most is in the summer, whenever my tomatoes, my peppers, and onions and everything are coming on, and I want to make my salsa entirely from my farm. So this last season, I freeze dried the cilantro. I found I didn't really care for it just dried, but I'm hoping maybe freeze dried it will maintain more of that fresh flavor. I just love cilantro, so I like a very cilantro heavy salsa. I'm gonna try it this year, and if it doesn't work, I'll end up just buying some. But over the winter, one of the things that I was using the cilantro for is to make like a chimichurri sauce with parsley, and then doing like grilled flank steak with that garlicky, herby chimichurri sauce. So good. And that was definitely what was on my mind when I put this plant down here. So over here I've got quite a few little starts of lemon basil. I love basil tea, which is something that I've talked about a lot. I've got a video over on my cooking channel if you guys want like step-by-step instructions for that. I'll add it to the list of linked videos. Now, when I first started growing all the unusual varieties of basil, I wanted to grow them just because I wanted to grow everything. But I would grow like the cinnamon basil and lemon basil and Thai basil, Tulsi holy basil, and then just regular basil, purple basil, all of them. But what I found when I would actually go to use those leaves is there wasn't just a drastic difference. Like you could smell the cinnamon and the lemon more than you could actually taste it when you were cooking with things. So what I would typically do is just take all the different kinds of basils, dry them, crumble them up together, and use those as like a basil blend, which is really good for cooking whenever you like really basil forward flavors. But then I learned about making basil tea, and I found that the different flavors of basil, like lemon or cinnamon, are very, very pronounced whenever you are brewing them into a tea. And you can drink it hot, but I personally love it iced. It is just the taste of summer for me. And the reason I grew this kind of like big area of lemon basil is because I think if I had to pick a favorite basil for basil tea, it would be Tulsi holy basil and lemon basil. When you add honey to this after you've brewed it and you make that cold iced tea, it tastes like a lemon head, you know, the little candies. Oh, it's so good. So that's why I've got 6 plants here. This is gonna get really bushy and full. Now right next to that, I've got a couple of oreganos. This is a variegated oregano. You can see, you know, plants like this, he's looking a little struggly right now, but this plant will end up just taking off. As it branches out, it'll root along its stems and get really bushy. Now, this one over here is just a regular oregano, and this is also why I wanted pruners. I'm just going to cut these. Alright, that's definitely enough to go into the house and dry, crumble that up and use later. You can see it was starting to go to seed. You see the flowers there? It's really important to remember that your plants are not growing to feed you. They have no clue that you are involved in the process. They are growing to make seeds. So all plants are just trying to make seeds, spread their kind, and for things like perennial plants, like this oregano, this plant wants to grow, it wants to spread, it wants to get larger so that it can maintain a constant input of energy. And most of these like kind of cold hardy perennial herbs like oregano and mint and lemon balm, all of these things are all in the same family. You get the most growth out of these in like very late winter and early spring, at least where I am. If you're living in a cooler place, probably like mid-spring to late spring, you're going to see the real crawl and the spread of these herbs during that time. So I planted this thing a little late for it to really crawl and spread. But when I see a kind of gangly plant trying to shoot up flower stalks, I'm like, whoa, 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 buddy, you have some growing to do. Because as soon as it puts up those flower stalks, it's not going to as aggressively grow. It's going to put its energy into making those seeds. Now, it's a perennial plant, so it would eventually keep growing. But really, when you first plant your herb plants, if they start flowering right after that, I like to typically try to cut those flowers off. So this plant is going to put more energy into developing roots and sprawling a bit. So in the the case of this oregano, it will begin rooting where it is touching the ground, like these little parts of these branches that are coming down. And it will end up taking up a much bigger space. And by cutting off that real tall, gangly growth, I'm going to get a much bushier and fuller plant. If it tries to go to seed again later in the season, I totally let it, but I'm not quite ready to let that happen yet. So here, this is interesting. Both of these plants were labeled hyssop when I bought them, and they very well may both be hyssops and just be different kinds. As you can see, this is quite different foliage, but I planted them both here, and I just figured we would give them some time and figure it out as they grow. Here I have just a basic culinary sage. I'm not going to cut on this guy just yet, but soon I will work some sage into something that I'm cooking, and I'll come out here and just cut the whole top of this plant off again so that it'll focus on bushing rather than growing up. Sage is perennial here, but I have found that if you let your sage get really tall and leggy, when the cold weather comes, the bottom parts will die, and you'll end up with this really like stemmy plant that has like clumps of growth on the ends of the stems, and I don't want that. So I'm going to be real mindful to keep this sage cut down some so it will bush out. With all these herbs, cutting tall growth off will cause them to branch out more, and you'll get bushier plants, which is how you get more production in a smaller amount of space. Right next to it, I have pineapple sage, another excellent tea plant. This one was kind of a late addition. I actually have a big pineapple sage plant up in my other garden. I've grown this every year for several years now. The pollinators love it. It puts off these really tall pink spikes, and it smells incredibly tropical. It makes a nice accompaniment to fish dishes, and I also like it in seasoning pork. But I am really looking forward to making lots of teas with this year, and it gets huge. And I have this big open space, so I decided a pineapple sage would be a good addition here. It is annual, so whereas the culinary sage, just the basic sage, that one will live over winter here, this one does die back and does not, at least for me, has not come back. I always have to get a new plant each year. Here I have parsley, and I am extremely surprised that it's actually doing as well as it is. I kind of expected it to go straight to seed like the cilantro. Now parsley is one that I was not planning on harvesting any of this until after this winter. This plant will grow a lot over winter, and here is really what I was prepared for all of these cold loving plants to do. This is dill, and he did not do well with the planting out and the ton of rain and then the heat we've had. So I'm gonna leave it in. As long as I'm seeing like actual life still on a plant, I'll leave it, but I'm prepared to have to replant that dill this fall. And then right here on the end of this bed, I have a lemongrass plant. A fantastic tea plant. I absolutely love this for tea, and of course it's used in a lot of Asian cooking. I will tell you, when it comes to harvesting lemongrass, when it's young like this and the leaves are really young, it's not painful. Whenever it's big, you better wear gloves because it will just cut your skin to shreds. Now it's going to take up a lot of the end right here. I put these kind of close together, honestly, thinking that by the time this parsley kind of takes off this fall, that will be being cut back. The frost will kill that back. I'll cut it all down before then, and then this parsley will fill out. That may or may not come back next year, the lemongrass. If you leave the roots in place, sometimes it'll grow the next year. It really just depends on how cold our winter gets. So in this bed, I have Russian tarragon on one end and French tarragon on the other. I started with those side by side, and several of you told me that Russian tarragon grows fiercely and fast, and so I moved them down to opposite ends of the bed. Y'all, if y'all hear that, one of my little goats, I'm weaning. I had to pull my little male goat that I'm keeping and put him in with the other male goats, and his heart is broken right now because he is taken away from the herd that he knows, which are his sisters and his mom. And while it does sound very pitiful for him to be screaming, and I have had people be like, I don't know how you handle that, it seems so heartless to just be talking, and that poor goat needs, you know, is crying. If I give him what he wants, he will breed his mom. So we do feel sad, but we don't give in. So I'm sorry if that is distracting in this video. Oh, this is the French. I left the Russian down there. I'm seeing a couple of the stems here get kind of on the taller side, so I'm going to go ahead and cut those too. Now this is sharing space with some basils. The basils will get big and full, but I'll do stuff like this when I'm planting like this new tarragon. That thing's not going to get to its big full potential probably until like fall, and so it can share space with the basil, and the basil will be done by the time that needs the space. Down on this end, there's the Russian tarragon, you know, same thing. There's an interesting little buggy on here. And this is sharing space with this holy basil. This holy basil will grow a lot right here. I'm trying to grab these little grasses out when I see them. They're not too bad yet. Now there are a few basils that just go to seed very readily, and it's typically not a problem. Holy basil or Tulsi is one that gets these flower stems, stalks, super fast. And it does not change the flavor of the basil for it to go to seed, so I don't typically try to fight that. However, with some of these plants here, being that they're fairly new basil transplants, I do want to cut these ends off, because real fast straight to seed growth is going to mean gangly plants and less leaves for me. I'm growing these for the leaves. So by cutting them, specifically cutting them right above where they split, right here, it's going to cause these two stems to grow bigger, and it's just going to cause our whole basil to bush more. Now right here I have a verbena plant, and you can see lots of dead brown leaves. I wasn't sure what this is, and I didn't plant it because I wanted to research it. And then when my boys were mowing and weed eating, they moved the little wagon around, which is completely fine. I just forgot it. It was out of sight and out of mind. And it got a little crispy before I put it in. Now it's right in the middle of this bed. I expect in future years this bed is going to be filled by the verbena in the middle and the two tarragons on the end. Like right now it has the basil, but in future years I probably won't have basil here. With this plant getting kind of crispy, I just cut off a lot of the top. It was real tall, and that way this new fresh green growth will take off. Oh, he looks rough now, but he'll be okay in the long run. Now behind me I've got a curry plant, which also kind of had some dieback when I put it in, but it's looking pretty good now. That's going to get really large. And here I have some fennel, which I actually did not expect much of this either. I was fully prepared for this fennel to go the way of the dill plant that I planted down there. But it actually looks really good, and I think it's liking the shade that's down here. So I'm excited for that. Fennel is something that if I leave some of it in the ground, it will come back for me the following season. It'll die back a lot when it's hot and then come back in the winter. So we'll see how that goes. That was me just kind of being optimistic, and it looks like it may work out. This space is still empty. Not 100% sure what I'm going to put in here yet, but I have two clumps of chives down here on the end. I'm very excited for these to be here. I have a few chive plants up in the other garden, but the two things that I run out to the garden for the most in the middle of cooking is fresh chives and thyme. And I'll dry some and I'll keep them in the house, but like I just love garnishing with fresh chives. It just gives a little oomph to so many things, and having this right outside the door is gonna be really nice. Over here I have some thyme. This one I planted first, and then this one I actually found this among my berry plants. I didn't realize I had bought another one, and I stuck it in when I saw it. And anytime I have a plant that I've accidentally let get too dry and it's not doing great, I always put it in the ground, and before I start cutting on it, I give it a few days to grow some roots so I can see what's actually dry and crispy and what's going to come back. So I'm just going to cut back all the areas where this lost its leaves or where it's looking sparse. And that way the plant is not trying to support those areas, and it will be good as new soon. Right here I've got a really beautiful rosemary. I would say this thing is looking probably the most notably different. I think it's grown about an inch all the way around, and it's looking super green and healthy. This is another one that if you let it get too gangly, your rosemary, you'll end up with bare stems and clumps of leaves on the end. So make sure you are regularly cutting your rosemary. I know that it's really intimidating when you have herbs to cut them and use them, because people are like, when do I do that? What do I do? You are not doing your herbs any favors by not cutting them. The more you cut them, honestly, and keep them pruned back and keep them from that gangly growth, overall, the healthier that plant is going to be. So with rosemary, if you're not ready to use it, just cut it and dry it. I mean, dried rosemary is great. Or if you don't have any more use for dried rosemary, say you've got like your full big jar and you don't want any more, throw it on the stove in some water with some citrus rinds and simmer it, and your whole house will smell like just amazing. It's beautiful. You can do a little simmer pot with that. Rosemary's great for that. So just cut the rosemary. Now behind me here, I've got a few lavender plants, but more excitingly, I have the burgeoning butterfly pea plants. Happy birthday, little guys. These look like they just came out of the soil. I planted them a while ago. Butterfly peas take a good long time to germinate, and I've got several seeds here. And once you get it established, it will reseed itself, as long as you don't pick every single flower that it puts off. But it's going to cover this whole trellis, which is great. My plan for this corner is a rose. I had ordered one, and then I had canceled the order because I was waffling about whether I wanted to do it or not. So now I've been like, I'm just going to go to a store and find one. This is my analysis paralysis bed. This is what that looks like. Let it be a lesson. Don't grow gardens like this. They're very unfruitful. All right, behind me here is the green stalk. The green stalk that I was requested by my viewers to grow this year. Grow one green stalk as if it were your only one to see how much you can get off of it. I would say that it's going well. We've had a lot of cherry tomatoes. Ben has been out here snacking on them. And then I noticed this right when I walked in. Look at that. That's actually my first larger tomato this year. Probably could use a little more ripening, but that's pretty exciting. So this variety is just called patio tomato, and then the yellow is called yellow tumbling. But I've also got some little cucumbers coming up here. See those? I'm gonna obviously let those get bigger. This is mint, and I realized several people told me that's going to take over that whole level, but I don't think I'll be mad if that happens. I'll just let it have the whole level in the future. I actually may have enjoyed this green stalk more than I've ever enjoyed one. The tomatoes beat my big garden, but it looks like the cucumbers are going to beat my big garden too. I don't know, I may have some babies out there. I'm bringing all this stuff in here and setting it down to take in the house. Alright, and the last bed, oh, I do need to put the green stalk cap back on. I take it off to put my camera up there so I can talk to y'all. So the last bed here is the lavender. And I actually cut off the first blooms of this lavender so that it would focus on roots. And I debated cutting them off again, but I went ahead and let them bloom. I'm going to keep an eye on them, because if I start seeing like a lot of this, you know, where that lower growth is dying back, I may cut them off again so that they'll focus on bushing. Nothing in this garden I really expected a big harvest from the first year. Mostly this year I was anticipating getting things established for later use. Eventually, you know, once these lavenders live through the winter and then they come back next spring, this whole bed will be just lush and full, and they'll be very large. And now Maya and I are actually having a date day today, and one of the things we are doing is running into a couple of stores, still looking for seating for this area. I've had several people send me some links, and I just haven't been in a rush, but I think I may have found some, so we are taking the truck, and for our date day, we are going to go find some chairs for me to enjoy a cup of tea in the morning in my tea garden. So there we have it. This is my tea garden as it stands in late May 2025. I have had to really resist the urge to come in and plant a whole lot of things in all the empty spaces. I'm trying to think with longevity here. When you're establishing perennial spaces, one of the biggest things to bring to the table is your patience, because they definitely, I think they say first they sleep, then they creep, then they leap. this whole garden, I could do regular tours this year, and though there may be some things to see, it's mostly going to be that establishing maintenance of trimming and pruning, and I may get a handful of stuff here and there. That fennel may surprise me. I may get a pretty good harvest off that plant. But for the most part, this is going to be slow going this year. Next year, however, this is going to be really awesome. I mean, I already think it's awesome, but it'll be really impressive next year. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today and all the days you do. I bless you. Until next time.